Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. We're officially back in business. What a day of the CDL action we had last night. So much drama, so many storylines, especially those Scump responding to what exactly went down between himself and Activision, the CDL side, when the copyright claim struck just a couple of days ago and his entire stream got nuked off the face of the planet. Scump now says it'll be YouTube exclusive, but some questions as to whether at all they're going to be going to any majors this year after this whole debacle. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Before we begin, big thanks to Underdog Fantasy for supporting today's content. If you guys want a great place to play fantasy action, this is the place to be. Call of Duty, all sorts of sports. If you want to show off your incredible mind for Call of Duty, of course, this is the place to be. No doubt Clayster needs a big bounce back series after what we're going to see in the coming minutes here up against the Toronto Ultra. And yesterday, as you might expect, Scrappy had a pretty good time in these. He smashed the higher on maps 1, 2, 3 and map 1 as well. I think he was on the lower for map 2 and map 3. But yeah, the result frankly didn't matter, as we'll see in the coming minutes. So if you guys are in these localities, get involved with Underdog, use code RAB on their match, any deposit you make up to the value of $100, and be sure to play responsibly if you choose to. Let's dive straight into the action, baby, because man, last night was interesting. Heretics versus Rocker was not quite a slam fest, but you gotta say, this Rocker team so far, it ain't looking so good. Heretics now moved to 3-0. Okay, sure, their matches have been more winnable than some other teams have played against, but Rocker, another defeat for the books. I can't lie, the SMG duo here on Rocker has looked pretty promising. Linz has had his moments, Vivid in the series nearly dropped 100. It was MettalZ though that dropped 20k damage on the other side of the server. For the first time this year, I think we've seen 20k. Like, MettalZ has been killing it so far. It's what I said the other day, right? MettalZ JurNii lucky. So much fun to watch. Great players. Vikul's there to kind of fill the gaps. The team looks nice. It's early days to say how good Heretics are going to be, but I'm liking the trajectory so far. Rocker won map 1, but after that it was 3 in a row for the Heretics. And yeah, accuracy 0.76, awakening 0.85. Look, lots of questions on Wake this season, especially with no sound equalization. You know, snaking is gone. There's been some questions how impactful this guy's going to be. And look, you look at the Rocket team and you think, well, the SMG duo is surprisingly pretty impactful so far. Accuracy hasn't been great, but what do you expect, really? I was expecting Awakening, if anything, to come out and slay hard. That hasn't really been the case so far. So there's questions there on Rocker. Is their AR duo doing anything? So they're starting 0-3. They've got to figure it out going forwards. And of course, you know, we got the first use of this meme. I didn't do anything today. Literally the first series after this meme came into existence, we had a use for it already. And yeah, Vivid was bashing his head against the wall here, right? So he didn't seem so happy about the results here. And obviously lots to think about for those guys. But Miami, right? I mean, we saw this case of Wants to Load way back in 2019 when Heretics came into the Pro League initially. That, you know, they were killing it at the start. They started 5-0 back in 2019. They're starting 3-0 this time. Okay, look, the trajectory didn't go forever. They didn't win champs or anything, but they were a solid team for the majority of that season. And look, if you want to stack points, now's the time to do it. 30 points already on the board for Heretics. That's more than plenty of other teams. So exciting stuff. I will say quickly on Rocket as well that I did see these comments going around on Osama bin Sate, which is what people called Brian Sate when he was part of the Rocker. And he actually replied and said, it's almost as if these terrible teams that they're forming weren't just my hand. I was, you know, I wasn't just one hand crafting Rocker's rosters. Crazy to believe, I know, because, you know, Saint got a lot of stick for the way those rosters are built. And now he's saying, look, they're still building crap rosters. It wasn't me type thing, which is pretty funny to say. But especially when obviously his team, Ravens, played later in the day. And we'll see how that went, of course. There was also this series, Subliners versus Legion. Gotta say, some more breakdowns here for the Legion guys. Like, the Search and Destroy was probably winnable. But again, like, Subliners, I'm not gonna lie, HyDra had a 1.7 this series. The entire Legion got slammed, and it does feel like we're starting to see a legitimate skill gap emerge in the game already. Usually early on, it's not upset central, but there's more possibilities for the lower tier teams to beat the upper tier teams. So far, the theoretical top 4 haven't lost a series yet against, you know, teams that aren't theoretical top 4, of course. We've seen New York play OpTic, so someone had to lose, but ever since then, all of those teams have beaten everyone they've played. It's been close, for sure, but it's not been that close, to be honest. Now, what series was close, though, was Subliners versus Gorillas the other day. We know that Skyz did the snaking map 1, and I was, and many of the community members were frustrated that there was seemingly so much inaction from the pros on dealing with this issue. Skyz snaked, whether you think it was intentional or not, it was snaking by the rules, and I was expecting many of the pros to come out and kind of say, look, wasn't acceptable, either like first strike or first defense or whatever. There's going to be some sort of repercussions to just make it very clear this isn't going to be acceptable. Skyz apologized, but you know, you never want a situation where you feel like, well, if I just do it and then I apologize and everyone forgives me, it's fine. That's not the case. And actually, Skyz said afterwards that they didn't get warm-up today because he snaked. So that seems to be the punishment, especially for like a first defense type thing, which is pretty good. Like the pros are holding Skyz and York accountable for this. They're making it clear that it's not going to be acceptable to break the GA. They're not like blacklisting them for a week, but I think it's a pretty reasonable punishment, to be fair, to show the team, all right, no one's going to warm me up your match. So you've got to go in, you know, blind. You've got to go in just playing 2v2, Rust control or whatever you want to do to warm up for the series, or just shoot some bots, I suppose. But this is the strategy, it seems, to try and enforce the snaking GA going forward, which is pretty effective, I would say. Skyz seemed apologetic and try not to do it again. And I think the pros have actually somehow, can you believe it, managed this one pretty well so far. But we'll see if that lasts, of course. Then we had FaZe versus Surge. This was exciting just because FaZe versus Surge, it always tends to be historically a pretty good matchup. Okay, FaZe usually win, but Surge have done kind of well in this series. And it was relatively close, but again, it just felt like FaZe had the edge, especially in the respawns, right? I mean, you got to say, Surge have played FaZe and OpTic 2 days in a row, and they've only won one respawn out of those two series. They did win a map here, they won the high-rise search, but FaZe really just had it from start to finish here in all of the game modes. And look at the numbers, right? I mean, it's a scary sign, you gotta say, for the league, especially when teams like Surge that have been billed as maybe they could challenge the top teams outside of the expected top 4. Like, they didn't even come close here, right? Arsty's had a bit of a stinker against his former team. It's interesting, okay, iLLeY had his first kind of bad series of the season, but, you know, usually against your former team, okay, Arsty's was there a couple of years ago now, but we saw iLLeY against OpTic, he turned up despite the loss, but they just got slammed. Cell at a 1.3, Simp at a 1.2. The entire team's looking disgusting. I will say it's kind of Cellium's first series where he really came to play, and I will say one of the reasons why might have been that Surge tweeted out back at the end of November, so Cellium put this one in the draft, like, looking to rehome my pet snake named Cellium, he's been G8, and Cell just came back and says, you know, screw you guys, 131. So pretty funny stuff, of course, no snaking from Cell's side. It seems like it's all kind of under control for the time being, so good to see. But also, if you're Surge and Cellium's taking notes, then you're probably going to get slammed when you play them. But it's interesting, right, that all the top teams so far are pretty much crushing them. And we saw the same story again in the final series when Ravens play up against Toronto. This, I'm not going to lie, I felt was a foregone conclusion. I just couldn't see this not going as it did, to be honest. And I mean, it happened in the way that I thought it would. So Real as well was actually playing from Toronto's facility, which is really cool from Toronto. They did the same for iLLeY, didn't they, last year sometime? Something like that anyway. I think they've done this a couple of times, opened their doors for players to play and absolutely slam them. So, you know, this is what happens here at Ultra versus the Ravens guys. I will say as well, all the gas about Scrappy this season, obviously for good reason, still a phenomenal player, but I would say that the most impressive player in the league for me so far has probably been CleanX. I didn't expect him to come out, especially in the meta we have. And sure, he's using the MCW here on the sub base, but I didn't expect CleanX to be as good as this now. Like, we know CleanX is great, and he's been historically a player for the last couple of seasons that's been, you know, underrated because he drops a 0.9, but he's incredibly impactful. He's still impactful at a 0.9, but when he's on a 1.4, I mean, bloody hell, you're just not going to lose a map. So, okay, he didn't quite have a 1.4, but he had a 1.14 with 12k damage most in the lobby. So, you know, when CleanX is playing like that, I don't understand how you're going to beat these guys. Like, there's teams that can do it, but Toronto have looked pretty impeccable so far, and this was just an absolute bloodbath. Okay, map 1, there were maybe some chances in there for Ravens. It was a sub-base, an absolute bang out, of course. 231, 156. If you are doing your underdog higher or lowers, it's worth thinking about where the sub-base is going to be played, because, you know, and whether the vetoes might go that way, because it does definitely play into the hands of, you know, the potential outcomes on that one. And then the Skid Row and the Crutchy, they weren't even close, really. Scrap at a 1.2. Clay, of course, comes in here. Again, deals some big damage, but the team is still a few steps away. I think it's expected with Ravens in a way as well that when they come into this season with the roster they formed, with a couple of rookies on and everything, they're going to need some time to develop as a team. In the same way that I said multiple times that Boston, I didn't expect them to be particularly good at the start of the season. They're going to take time to figure it out. If they even want to figure it out, they might just blow it up. I don't know if Ravens are going to do the same thing, but you know, I think with Clay and rookies and GoDeceives coming back in, there's always going to be a learning curve there. Like, I don't think these guys are going to turn up and start being great celebrate immediately, but yeah, Toronto just slammed them. And even Insight's reaction was pretty funny as well. He was like, oh my god, these guys, like, why did I have to get out of bed to absolutely slam these guys? And Scrappy, of course, comes out and says, these guys are terrible. We saw the screenshots are on the thumbnail, just absolute quality content. And even Scrap came out with a bit of trash talk on Twitter, as he does. GG's London, or whatever their name is now, 130, Tombstone pile drive them to the bottom of hell. I thought it was funny as well that he didn't even mention Clay, you know? We know all the beef between Scrap and Clay over the last couple of weeks, and there's been all this trash talk between the two of them. Scrap knew that he was going to get the victory, and I know people were like, oh, he expected, you know, we expected him to say something against Clay, kind of bad trash talk. I think the trash talk's arguably even better, that he just doesn't mention Clay at all. Maximum disrespect. Who even knows who this guy is? So great storylines, but, you know, I was hoping for a game 5. I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I was hoping for a game 5 here, but Toronto looking very good, and it's got to be said across the board right now, these top teams are looking kind of impeccable. Like, okay, OpTic, FaZe, New York, and Toronto, as I say, against any team that isn't top 4, they're 10-0 so far. Some of those have been close, absolutely, but it feels like there is a skill gap at the moment. I mean, there's always a skill gap, and people say, oh, no skill gap. There's always a skill gap. The best teams are always the best teams. There's always something there. But on this game, maybe it's more than we've seen in some time, which probably isn't a surprise because I'm not going to lie, Search and Destroy in this game is the best it's been for many a year, I would say, at least since Cold War, and even in Cold War there was Soundy Q cheese that we knew about after the fact at the very least, and Control in this game is, again, the best it's been for a good couple of years. So I'm not surprised that there's a skill gap, but I think it's just kind of good to see. And, okay, the maps aren't great to watch necessarily and to play as well, so there's definitely things I would improve and fix about the game, but, you know, it is what it is. Also this from Brian Stats, the records of the guys that are in their 10th season, Clay attach slasher accuracy, it ain't looking so good so far. They're a combined 2 and 11, but we've got to talk about this whole Scump situation, the response to the Activision thing. If you guys didn't see about it, there was loads of reaction to this, especially when Activision are going to come through and copyright claim Scump's stream for doing something that they said he wasn't able to do, rather than maybe communicating that with him and making it clear and whatever. We talked about it, whether OpTic would try to, you know, big dick energy the league. It might have backfired somewhat because the lawyers at Activision are certainly not going to mess around, and they're going to say, look, Scump, if you want to just watch our, you know, if you just want to sit there and react to our matches and kind of use our product and make free money off it, then do so. Otherwise, we're going to kick you out type thing. And you can talk about that either way. And especially when the numbers that Scump was bringing in were being utilized, let's say, to push the new deal that they've got through with YouTube. So lots of drama on it, lots of debate on it. I'll share a couple of clips here from Scump where he says the results, let's say, of the talks that he had with Activision, like, okay, we ain't doing Twitch anymore. We can't do any watch parties over there, even if it's just the face cam. It's going to be YouTube only. But as a result, they had positive talks. They, I guess, released the strike. So Scump's able to do it again. But also he says potentially attending majors is not going to be on the cards.
Yeah, no more Twitch streams.
Yeah. No more. We got you live on YouTube, though, ladies and gentlemen.
No more Twitch streams, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to the stream.
I do want to say, yeah, yesterday we got taken down, right? It was a big talk of the town. Talked to the CDL last night. Actually, very positive conversations that went down. But yeah, no more Twitch streams during the CDL. So
Yeah.
we learned our lesson. Actually, we don't know if we're going to events anymore.
What?
I mean, we don't know if we're going yet. We have to like talk it over and figure some shit out, but we don't know if we're going this year.
No way.
Because that's like 6 days, 6 extra days that we can't stream on Twitch. So like we gotta figure it out.
So it's interesting what Scump says about the majors thing, right? I mean, he says that it's an extra few days that he wouldn't be able to stream on Twitch, which I guess is fair enough. But it was kind of like, it was the same thing last year in a way, but he was streaming on Twitch at the time. So he'd still be able to do the same watch parties, but it's just as it is now. Maybe he's just wondering, like, if he just stays in Texas and does all the watch parties from there, then maybe it's just easier because you don't have to do the traveling, and he can then, on the days that there aren't matches, he can just stream on Twitch to his audience and therefore still keep up the sub count and this type of stuff. But, you know, I think going to the events is so much fun that it's probably worth going. That's my perspective. But I'm not sure that anything has, like, substantially changed between last year and this year in terms of why he wouldn't be able to go to the events. I think it's just probably a financial question. Now they're on YouTube and, you know, keeping the Twitch sub count up is not going to be as achievable as it was previously. Then, you know, they want to find other ways potentially to get around that. But still, a good resolution, I suppose. The drama is potentially behind us for now. The funny thing was, though, that later in the stream, his internet went out in the facility. So people thought that Activision had, like, you know, cut his internet line or something like that. But it didn't seem like that's necessarily the case. These are the 3 games for today. So OpTic are back in business. They play Ravens, and I can't really see this going too many other ways than the way that you might predict. To be honest, all of these games, apart from Guerrillas Thieves, is to me the most interesting one. I can see a potential upset there, but Thieves did look pretty good against Boston, to be honest. And Guerrillas, I don't know. Guerrillas are like the one team that I'm actually kind of interested to see how they do today. But I think that the OpTic Ravens and the Ultra Breach series, it's just going to be tough for those 2 teams on the left-hand side. But very much interested in your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy. Take care, and I'll see you next time.